Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where you meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gothberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners. I'm so pleased that you are listening to this episode. It's episode number 32 since the start 1st of August 2015. And it's the second episode which I recorded when I was in London early February. I was fortunate enough to find out that Kathleen Haines, the Treasurer and CFO of Heidmar Tanker Pool, a Vista friend of mine, was actually visiting London at the same time that I did. So we sat down on the Heidmar UK offices for a chat. I think I need to tell you that this took place on the 3rd of February. And the office is very close to Westminster and Whitehall in London. It turned out that the day after, the UN co-hosted a big conference for Syria, which meant that it wasn't really easy to get into the office. And once we were in the office, there was a lot of noise going on when it comes to police sirens and things like that. But you just have to live with that, as I have. It shows that I'm in a big city and I'm in the center of where things happen. So back to Kathy. Kathy used to be the Vista International Treasurer, so that is how I met her. She's from the United States, and she will introduce herself and what she does in her everyday job. This is Kathy Haines for you.
Hello, I'm Kathy Haines. I am the CFO of Heidmar Inc.
What is your background? How did you end up here?
Oh, it's a funny story, of course, like everybody who in shipping's funny story, right? I started out my career as a public accountant, having majored in accounting in college. And then I was working in Texas at the time. And after I left public accounting, I went to work for a client who was a bank. And at that time, banking in Texas was small, individual private banks, not like we have today, big banks. Then the Texas banking crisis hit. So I happened to be in New York City for two cousins' weddings on 2 different weekends. And in between, I said, the writing's on the wall here. Let me just see what's available in New York. And I walked into OMI at that time, a tanker owner. And next thing I know, I'm packing my bags and moving to New York City.
Wow.
So,
and what year is that?
Do I have to tell you the year?
Oh, yeah, but
1989.
Oh,
Yeah.
So you've been in the tanker business all the time? Or?
All the time since then, yes. When I started with OMI, we owned half. Our company was foreign flag. That was joint ventures with various companies around the world. And the other half, more or less, was U.S. flag ships. So then in 1998, we spun ourselves off and we were only the foreign flag vessels and moved to Connecticut. But all the time we were a publicly listed company.
Interesting. You're such a power woman.
I don't know about that. But
no, what I mean, tanker business, isn't that usually looked upon as the really big guys?
Yes, it's definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, still today, of course, it is all the big guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it involves usually a lot of money for each ship, right? So you can't be afraid. And the market, as in any of the shipping markets, goes up and down.
And then you have all the oil majors too.
Yes.
As your clients.
Correct. And as you know, especially today, the vetting issues with oil majors are huge. I mean, since the time I started, shipping has definitely changed in that arena. I mean, now you're more and more conscious of vetting, training. That's why almost these tanker companies have to be large, because a small operator can't afford the vetting, the training you have to go through.
Can you explain vetting for people who doesn't know vetting? What is that?
Well, okay, I'm not a technical person, but vetting just means that you have gone through the process. All the oil majors have their own processes. And they actually don't often tell you what those processes and requirements are, but they send inspectors to ships and sometimes to offices, and they'll go through the process and make sure you're complying with things. So, and Now at Heidmar, we run tanker pools, and one of our requirements is that a ship has a certain number of vettings. And if you do not have a certain number of vettings, you get dinged for a pool point. And just to step back a little on what pools are, not swimming pools, but people give their ships to us to commercially manage, meaning charter them out. And we do it through a pool, a group of ships, like-kind ships. And that way you share in the earnings of every ship in the pool. And the way you do that is we lump together all the earnings for the month. Then each ship is assigned pool points. And then it's divided up based on your pool points. So if you lose one of your vettings, you can be dinged on your pool points. So, of course, it's up to, the owner of these ships to keep them up.
Yeah, of course.
And, we definitely help them with that. I mean, we have good relationships with the oil majors, so we know what they should expect and what they need to do.
So how many vessels are there in a pool? In your pool?
In our pool, we have 6 pools, altogether about 83 vessels.
Wow. Different sizes?
Different sizes of all tankers. So all carrying wet cargo, either refined petroleum products or oil.
But no gas or?
No gas.
What do you do every day at your work? I mean, what does a CFO do at a tanker pool company?
As a tanker pool company, okay, it's a little different than my previous job where I was a publicly listed and we spent a lot of time with compliance and shareholders. But my current job, I spend a lot of time with compliance there's a lot of things going around the world now on rules and regulations on who you can do business with. So we screen people we do business with to make sure they're not on the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act list. And that's very important because you have to remember as a pool manager, we are taking care of other people's assets and we're the steward of their money. The money that comes in every day from the charterers really belongs to other people, not to us. I mean, we do time charter ships in and put them in the pool ourselves, but for the most part, we're managing other people's money. So we spend a lot of time on reporting. We have a really nice system called eFleet Watch. It's a proprietary system where our pool partners can log in every minute of every day and check where their ships are, what they're earning, what the pool's earning. So we spend a lot of time on developing that and the accuracy of that. And then we're constantly reporting to everyone, managing their money, cash flow, paying bunker bills. And then a good part of my job is marketing the pools.
I see. Yeah. You travel a lot.
Yes. And that's because we have pool meetings. Again, we're very big on transparency and sharing information. And so we have 2 meetings a year with each of our pools. So that's 6 pools, 12 meetings a year.
And they're
around the world. Yeah. We try to schedule them where the pool partners want to meet because we want them to be there, right? So often, for the most part, pool members were in Greece and Germany, but now we have a lot in Asia and in the U.S. too. So all around the world. But, we go to shipping centers for these meetings, so people have business to do there.
Yeah, of course. What are the biggest changes that you have seen during your time in the tanker business?
Well, I think the regulations for sure. I think that's the biggest one. And not that I'm the person that follows the regulations in tankers, so don't make me explain all those. But that has become a big thing for tanker owners. Again, where you can't really own one tanker. It's pretty tough to do that, I think.
So all the people are, if you're a small ship owner doing this for your livelihood, like
yes.
5,
yes.
10 vessels.
Yeah, 10 is probably okay. But 5, you're probably outsourcing your commercial management to someone like us and your technical management to someone like B-Ships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I meet those people as well from time to time. They live where I live.
Yes,
in
the lovely city.
Yeah, and it could be. One of them could say instead, I could easily have owned lorries or trucks instead of ships, but I was born on an island, so
right.
It was natural for me to start as a ship owner. But of course, they have to employ their ships as well.
Correct.
And it's tough.
Yeah.
And then we got a new
the new technical leap that we are standing sort of in the middle of, in a way, with the green shipping and innovation and new alternative fuels and things like that.
I mean, you haven't seen that so much in the tanker world. You had a big to-do about eco ships a few years ago. I think the jury's still out whether they were really eco or not. But because really, from what I understand from naval architects, the design hasn't changed that much.
No,
for the
yet.
big tanker. The big tankers,
not
yes.
yet.
Yeah, and I think it will come, and they talk about LNG as fuel for the ships. So
yeah, and then you need the infrastructure on land too.
Yes,
and so on.
Yes,
a ship owner close to me is trying out methanol as a fuel. They have done that on ferries, and now they're doing it also on tankers. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yes.
How do you see the future of shipping?
I mean, I think shipping is here to stay, if that's what you're saying. But because talk about green, I think really transporting things by ship is greener than driving cargo around. So in that sense, I think if people are interested in greening, that shipping definitely has a place. Yeah. I mean, it's very hard to get things from one part of the world to the other without crossing the ocean sometime. So
yeah, we are a tool for the globalization.
Yes. I mean, shipping has really always been global, hasn't it? So for us, I think it was easy. Globalization doesn't really mean anything new.
No, not to us.
No, because we know people all over the world. It doesn't make much difference for us to pick up the phone to someone in Hong Kong or India. It's normal.
Yeah, I agree with you. But how does the shipping industry become more visible to other people than ourselves?
Another interesting question, because I actually live on the coast in the U.S., and still shipping is a mystery to people. So you can imagine if you don't live near water at all, it doesn't mean anything to anyone. There's bad ways to get publicity, of course. We have been in the news over time. But how it's communicated, I suppose... I don't know. Is shipping really interested in becoming more visible to the rest of the world? Maybe not.
I don't know. You tell me.
I mean, it's not like we earn our money from selling to the consumer.
Yeah, some of them do, but not the tanker business,
not the tanker business, yeah.
No, but I mean an industry as a whole. We need to get a hold of the young people.
Oh, okay. So in that sense, yeah. And how to get them interested in
shipping and all the cool things that are happening here now.
Yeah.
And also to be, not to always be the bad guys in media.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to show the good guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, probably you're doing that yourself, Lena.
Yeah.
Through your podcast.
Yes, I am. But I think, and also I think we tend to speak to each other about shipping.
That's true. And we don't really, we probably don't mingle well with other people.
No, because we enjoy ourselves.
Right. And we have a nice network, so that takes up all our time.
Yeah. In a way, I think it does.
Yes. So it's interesting. And maybe with, people focusing, at least again, I'm just reverting to tankers, but with people focusing on the price of oil and things like that, perhaps that is making people more aware of how it moves. Especially people in the U.S., there was a lot on the shale gas, and so people were aware that there was a balance between oil coming from OPEC versus oil coming from the U.S. Obviously, people know oil doesn't come from OPEC countries, over rail cars.
Oh. So did that help to get the shipping industry into focus? Tanker business?
No, I doubt it, but... I mean, it's a good question. I'm also on the board of the Seamen's Church Institute. So part of the mission there is to make people aware of seafarers and seafarers' plights. Mm-hmm. So that sort of raises the profile too. And it's not an easy job to do that either. And they actually have a very excellent website and social media. And still, I'm sure they don't get through to everyone.
But are they targeting people within the industry or
No,
outside?
Okay. Primarily outside, I think.
Yeah, because, we need to use the same tools as every other industry.
Yes.
Because we're going to compete for the young people.
Yeah, you are absolutely right.
And we want the most clever ones coming into our industry to take over our jobs so we can enjoy our retirement.
Yes. Yeah, that is a very good question. We have our maritime colleges, several located near the part of the country I work in. But I'm not really sure, how easy it is for them to recruit people or how many people actually stay in shipping after they get their degree there. Are they then not getting the jobs? Do they go somewhere else? I don't know the answer to that.
Because, if you put a lot of time and effort into an education, then you want to have a job at the end of that.
Of course. Yeah.
And if you don't get a job, maybe you're not at home when you're sailing, but if you go on a ship with a foreign flag and you never more or less see where you're from, that might have an impact as well.
Yes, well, I mean, you definitely find people in the U.S. that it seems that they try to get off the ship as soon as they can and get to an office.
You are one of the women who are actually invited to be keynote speaker at several conferences. I've seen that and I've heard that, and I think you're such a good one. So,
thank you.
Why are there not more women invited to be speakers?
Well, I don't know. I was recently speaking at a conference here in London, and someone else pointed out to me, going, "You're the only female on all these panels," and there was probably 25, 30 people. And I hadn't really noticed it because I was just concentrating on my spot part. So, and I know in all those panels there probably could have been someone. But especially, again, in the tanker industry, there's not that many women. And the women who are in this industry, and this I'll be a little more broad brush on, they tend to be back office type people. Now, it could be high level. I'm talking like accountants like myself, lawyers, people like that, support services. Those are not people that typically make it to the CEO level or even the executive level, maybe. There could be like one level below. So the answer to that, I don't know. I could think of one or two people. Lois Brocky, for example, from OSG. She went to sea. She was in operations, and so she has risen to a high position. But she's one of the few, definitely in the tanker. I can't really think of anyone else.
No, but you and I, we are members of Vista.
Yes.
Vista International. And when we go to the AGMs, I see a lot of competent women standing there speaking, delivering keynote speeches, which is better than many I've heard before.
Well, I guess you have to go to the conference planners and kind of give them a nudge. And I'm sure people would be happy to have a bigger base to draw from, because honestly, sometimes you go to these conferences and we're all the same speakers over and over.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of suggesting, which I made a mental note to suggest the people that did the last conference I was speaking at, just to say, wow, maybe you should find someone else, other people.
Yeah.
But
and then again, maybe it's the same audience every year, and then there need to be some changes.
Yes.
I think.
We all get very set in our ways, don't we?
Yes, we do. And I think that's human.
Yeah.
But also when you consider, I think that we are in the middle of change, a period of change, a paradigm. It's happening now. And I can see it because I see elderly people who used to work until they died on their post, now retiring instead, because they can't see sort of the light in the tunnel. So they think, okay, I'm going to retire and leave this to the next generation. Yeah. So now I see a lot of ship owners, 35, 40 years old, and they've been educated abroad, and they have seen other industries. And then they come back to the family-owned company. And then they start to think, maybe this should be done in a different way.
Well, that's a good thing.
And on top of that, I see the technical innovations happening now. We've got these emission control areas close to where I live.
Yes.
And I mean, there's nothing changing people as much as when you need to do that.
Right.
So I see a lot of innovation going on about alternative fuels and scrubbers and so on. So I can see that there are things happening. And what about unmanned ships? Do you have a view on that?
No, I don't. We were discussing that a bit last night, and it seems like a interesting idea, let's say, but no, I have not heard of that in, our business. And
I don't think it's going to be completely unmanned, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to try and interview someone who knows a lot about the technical side of this. But then again,
I'm sure technically it could happen, but then you get to port and you have to man the ship then. Take care of the car. I mean, that's the most stressful for people in my business is being in port because, you have to turn around quickly. You're working with oil. You can't spill it. So will we have like robots?
I don't know.
Remove the cargo? Maybe. I don't know. Lots of things have happened in our lifetime we didn't know would happen.
I agree. And port terminals, when it comes to containers, they are now getting automated.
Oh, I'm sure. Taking off the containers by cranes and machines. Yeah.
So that will probably change, but different in different segments, of course. But my theory is that if there's going to be more unmanned ships and more people on shore than controlling or operating the ships at sea, maybe you need other skills than the skills that has been required now.
Yeah.
In my narrow little world, I also think that up until a few years ago, people were recruited. One person who was sailing went ashore, started a ship-owning company, and then recruited people, preferably those who had been on the same ship, because that was more easy to handle those people, more or less. And as time went by, there were other skills necessary to be working for a ship owner than just being sailing. Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
And I think we will see that development as well, if people are going to be on shore controlling the ships out there.
Yes. And that'll be a big change for places like the Philippines, India, where we get crew from.
Yeah.
Because that won't be the same, as you said, the same group that you would draw from.
No. I spoke to Gerardo Borromeo about that. He's in the Philippines and his company is employing 600,000 Philippines. So he's one of the big suppliers of crew. Mm-hmm. So he said they are taking that into account now when they are educating young cadets.
Okay.
Because they think they have a time when they are sailing and then they are probably going ashore.
Right.
As the European and the North American sailors are now working on shore and not on the ships.
Right.
Then the Asian people came and were more of the sailors. And now we can see that the African continent might be the one supplying with crew. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the Asian people will stay ashore. So it's like constant change all the time. Yes. So you need to build into that in your education that there will be life on shore after your sailing time as well.
Yes.
So then you need to
have a different education.
New things, yeah. And that also plays into what I think, that there are so few women within the shipping industry. So few women sailing.
True.
So if there were jobs now that didn't require that you were going to sail first, maybe we will get more women into the industry.
That could be.
I don't know. It's far-fetched, but I hope for it. Because I think we need more women into it. You have to have a match of people.
Yes. I think it's all a matter of how you recruit people for those positions, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And the economy they're coming from plays a role. And culture.
Yeah, so many things playing a role. You told me yesterday that you were a godmother to a ship.
Yes, I told you this because, as you know, you did another podcast with the godmother. So,
so now it's going to be the podcast Godmothers.
Yes, a fairy godmother. Well, it's a kind of a funny story because I was selected to be the godmother of a Suezmax tanker, the Cape Bonnie. And
how did that come around?
That came around because this is at the time I worked for OMI, and we were partners with Kathleen C in a tanker pool, not smaller ships, but smaller amount of ships. And it's why Kathleen asked me to be the godmother of one of their ships being built in Ulsan, Korea. And so, of course, I said yes. And flew to Beijing just for a little bit of a holiday. This was in 2005. Actually, it was the weekend Katrina hit New Orleans. So I remember watching that on the TV. And then my husband and I flew to Ulsan for the ceremony. And while we were flying, the pilot goes, "This will be the last flight into Ulsan because there's a typhoon coming." Oh. So we were battered around, get to the hotel, and you can't go outside. And in the meantime, they had to take the ship away to a safe harbor. So I go inside, and as you know, the naming ceremonies are quite elaborate, and you break the bottle of champagne on the ship and name the ship. Instead, I went to a conference room in a hotel. They give you a little axe that you would normally cut the rope with, which is then attached to the bottle of champagne. And then a picture came down in the room. So it was quite sad, really.
And you never got a second chance to do that?
No, I never did. I know. I should follow that ship somewhere. And then I had to drive back to Seoul to catch a flight back in the pouring rain. So it was quite an adventure. But I really feel like I never...
You will never forget about it.
No, I won't forget about it.
So what was the name of the ship?
Cape Bonnie.
Exactly. But did you get the jewelry?
I did. I got a very nice bracelet. So there you go.
I forgot to ask Karin about that, if she got a bracelet also. Yeah. Because that is also tradition.
Correct.
If you are a godmother, you get some jewelry.
Yes. And the shipyard treats you quite nicely, too.
Nice. My sister-in-law, she works for a jewelry.
Okay.
So she told me that at one point of time, Gothenburg was a big shipyard city where we're building new ships. So actually there were jewelries in that part of Sweden that were making all this handmade jewelry, supplying that to the ship owners.
Huh.
So there's a special tradition within the west part of Sweden for that. And the ship owners in Sweden decided to have brooches because everyone else had bracelets or whatever. So there is a special tradition of doing ship owners brooches for godmothers where I live.
Yeah.
And I never knew.
Interesting, yeah.
So I suggested that to the museum, the Seafarers Museum, to have an
exhibit, right?
Exhibit about that. Because that contributed to our art and
the whole economy of the area.
Yeah, it did.
Yes.
Good. So now we know that there is some jewelry when you are a godmother.
Yes.
I think you should have a second chance.
Yeah, I know. I do say that. She'll have to find a ship to be the godmother of. But she's still running, so that's a good news. She's still trading well. So
I didn't know there was a typhoon at the same time as Katrina was.
Yeah, it was just a few days later. No, I'm probably because Katrina was so big, it took over the whole news. And I don't think it was a typhoon that was, didn't cause serious damage to people.
Okay, so if we talk about finance and capital and things like that, could you talk a little bit about finance markets and where does the capital come from to the shipping industry?
Yeah, that's a big issue these days, right? Because traditionally, the capital part of the equity came from the ship owner themselves, right? They put in their money, and then the rest of it was financed by a shipping bank. And as you know, in Scandinavia, there are a lot of shipping banks. In Germany, there are a lot of shipping banks. Asia, especially now, there are a lot of shipping banks. But after the last financial crisis, the shipping banks lost a lot of money on ship finance. Some of them who did okay during that crisis then went on to lend to the offshore industry, which is now in a bit of a crisis. So the shipping banks are really not the place people can go to easily. If you're a long-established owner who's banked with someone a long time, yes, no problem. But if you're someone new starting out, no way. Even if you're what they'll call the second tier, banks will call the second tier, let's just say. Some of the banks go, we prefer you don't bank with us. Please move your loan. Not so easy for people to do. So the capital next came from private equity, private investors. And that is slowed down a bit because they're having trouble exiting, meaning going on and selling the company, let's say publicly listing it. Actually, I probably forgot one. Phase was actually public listing of companies. There was a time around 2005, especially on the dry side, that a lot of companies went public. They listed on the New York Stock Exchange and raised their money from the equity markets. Then again, when the shipping crisis hit, people lost money. Some companies went bankrupt. Some just barely survived. And investors, of course, did not make money. So now that it's very hard for investors to be interested in shipping, actually. And that's kind of goes back to your what makes shipping more visible to the public. Well, people lost their money investing in shipping. They probably don't want to hear too much about it now. So then when public companies were having problems, that's when private equity stepped in and did a lot of the financing. And things like the Norwegian bond market did financing. And now everyone's looking for where's the next money coming from.
So what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's difficult. I mean, there is money, there is liquidity in the market in general. There are people that need to invest. Just putting their money in a bank, they're earning nothing. But I think people are having trouble getting their head around shipping and not realize, or they didn't realize when they first stepped in how volatile it is. We don't grow consistently like a factory. It's up and down. A lot of cycles, so.
And usually it's
short ups and long downs, or it feels that way.
Yeah, but that has changed as well, hasn't it? It used to be more regular up and down, and now it's more like down.
Yeah.
Or?
Well, and then it pops up. I mean, the tanker industry last year had a very good year after several down years. Now, of course, the dry bulk market is really, really down. Containers is okay, maybe, to down. So.
But that has also got to do with what even I learned in school, that, if there is too many ships,
yeah, absolutely, then
the rates go down.
Correct. Supply, demand, that's pretty easy, right?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. But then again, why do they never learn? I mean...
That is a really good question, because we're constantly shooting ourselves in the foot. What's happening now, okay, dry bulk's down, so people aren't building ships there, and the orders for ships are being turned into tankers. Tankers is doing pretty well, but we get too many ships, it won't be doing well.
Yeah.
So I think it's just one person will say, well, I'll let everyone else not order ships, but I'm going to order them.
And if you order one today, you won't get it tomorrow.
No.
So things will have changed when you get it delivered.
Right.
A year or two,
yes.
3 or whatever, depending on what you're
And if we get a lot of technological changes, which really haven't happened yet, then ships become more efficient. You will need less ships, right?
Mm. And there are too many already.
Right. And then the shipyards, of course, are, backed by their governments, so they're able to lower their prices. So it's not truly competitive, right? I mean, so they encourage people to build a new ship. Someone goes, well, I could use a new ship.
But also, you have seen consolidation going on in the shipyards, shipbuilding market as well.
Right. Yes, I think so. And it's maybe not so easy to just build a new shipyard.
No.
So.
Can you explain to me this Jones Act?
Oh, no. We don't have that much time.
No, just in general.
Well, yeah. Well, Jones Act is, protects the U.S. cabotage trade, trading from port to port in the U.S. And lots of countries have rules on that, right? So the Jones Act just means if you're going from, and this is a simplified version, not the legal version, right? Going from one U.S. port to the next U.S. port, it has to be carried on a U.S. flagship.
Are there many shipyards in the United States?
There's a few, but again, these are subsidized, and also the price of building a ship in the U.S. is way more than building a foreign flag ship. So, the purpose of the Jones Act, I guess, was really to protect U.S. merchant marine, and then in the event of war, you would have people to draw from. Whether it's been successful or not is a matter of debate, and it's all very political.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that. I just wanted to know what it was and how it works in a way to understand why that is an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you build a ship, the cost is the steel and the people building it, more or less.
Right.
Because as a ship owner, you go to a shipyard and you say, this is what I want to have built.
Correct.
It's not like you have 3 on the shelf you can choose
from. No, right. You place your order and then they start building it.
Which also means that they are very unique. The ships built are unique to that ship owner, what he orders or she orders.
Yeah. Although I guess pretty standard.
Yeah. But then again, I have heard about master mariners who have to, they change ship, go to another ship owner work, and then they don't really understand that they have to learn different things that are in front of them because
Right.
it's not the same.
Mm.
There's no standard.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting. I didn't know
I
that.
didn't know that either. I would have thought they would be a little more standard, especially the bridge or how it works. Yeah.
Oh, and they have different systems, so it's not. There is no standard there either.
Right.
Which means that
It could be difficult then if you were moving from ship to ship, right?
Yeah, I don't think people do that, especially if you're a ship owner and you have a very qualified master mariner, you want to keep him.
Yes. Yes.
In her place,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't want to get them moving on. So
Correct.
maybe you don't change that many, or you change within the fleet, and then the fleet might have the same system, more or less. But all these things together, I understand, is one of the reasons why it's so hard to get the connectivity going for ships, to get them into the connected society, you know.
Huh.
Did you ever have a role model?
No. I can't really say so. I mean, I've had people help me along the way, but somewhat a role model, no.
So what kind of people have helped you along the way?
Well, I think the person that introduced me to Wista was Robert Bugby, who's now the CEO of Scorpio. At that time, he was the COO of OMI, and he said, "You need to go to this conference in Greece called Wista," which I hadn't heard of because at that time we didn't have one in the U.S. We only had one in the U.S. after we went to Greece, several of us, and were told we would have one in the U.S. So he was a big influence on my career as moving up to CFO of the company.
And more people? Or he was one?
Well, he was the one that, helped push that and the at that time CEO of the company, Craig Stevenson. He was also very supportive of me moving up because the former CFO left and they were trying to decide, well, do we put someone in from the outside or do we move up someone inside? So I think that made a big difference in my career, that point in time.
And now when you are the CFO, do you mentor young people around you? Or?
Yes, I think we're very important. I mean, that's probably one of the main reasons I stay so active in Wista is because I feel like those of us who have moved up in our career and we're lucky enough to be given a chance have to set an example for young people coming up.
I agree.
So that's really my main motivation for staying with Wista. Of course, I have a lot of good contacts and friends and all that, but as far as the importance of it, I would say. And I think it's always important. I mean, I do stress that in my current company at Heidmar that we have to find a way to help people in their careers and give them a path to move up because, when people stay, and people stay in shipping a long time, as you know. And so that's part of what maybe is less attractive for young people if they don't see they have a path to move up. And today's young people seem to want to move up very, very fast. Much faster than we did when we started out.
Yeah, but
or their expectations are so much different than ours.
It's the same in the entire society.
No, I'm sure it is. I didn't leave it only to shipping, but they're used to a fast-paced world.
Yeah.
So
then they have come to the right place because that is where we are living in a way.
Yes. Yeah.
In a fast-paced world. No, I agree with you that we have some sort of obligation to be those role models to show that women can actually come a bit higher up in the companies, also within the shipping industry. And that is why I asked you about this. You are delivering these speeches all over the world. Because you are a role model there as well.
Correct, that's true.
And that is the visibility of a woman who is a CFO in a tanker company. I think that has a big that value to young people to see that,
it's possible.
It's possible. And it gives them something to strive for. Who would you be interested to listen to the shipping podcast? Have you got any suggestions who I should interview?
I think you should interview Lois Zabraki, who I mentioned from OSG.
Okay.
Do you know her?
No, I don't.
You've never met her? Okay.
I still got that to do, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Should be a good one. There's so many interesting characters in shipping.
Yeah, that's the reason
I think you could go on forever.
Yeah, that's why I started this. Because I think there's so many interesting people. And they've all got a story to tell.
Yes.
And they're doing such a fabulous job. And people should know about that.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm grateful that there are so many people, so I can continue. I can retire being a podcast host.
I think so, because truly there are a lot. You can just open the shipping papers and go down the list of names.
Yeah, if they want to talk to me.
Yes.
You never know. Some people don't want to be in the spotlight.
Yes.
I don't think it's that bad. Okay, thank you very much, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a safe trip back to the United States.
Kathy has got an exciting job, and if you haven't listened to her before, you might see her or meet her in one of the conferences of Marine Money or something like that. She travels the world, as you might have understood from our conversation. As I have said before, I get a lot of questions around what is a podcast, how does it work, how do you produce it, and so on. But today I wanted to tell you a little bit about the statistics. I started out 1st of August 2015, and I thought maybe this with a podcast about shipping was just something that would amuse me and my closest friends, because they can't really get out of what I think is interesting. But, surprise, surprise, since the 1st of August 2015, the shipping podcast has been downloaded more than 25,000 times. Today I actually saw it was 25,292 downloads done. I can see an increase. Of course, it wasn't as many at the beginning. It's only now that people start to understand what it's all about and that it's out there, available. I see that there are approximately 3,000 downloads a month. That number needs to go up, I think. But if you think about it, it's 100 people downloading this podcast every day. And that is an audience you have to consider, both as a listener but also as an advertiser. I can also see which of the episodes are the most popular ones. I won't tell you that, but I can give you a hint. At the moment, it's ship owners. But I can also see that people might start with a late episode and then they go back and start from the beginning again, because the oldest episodes are the ones that are most listened to or downloaded. I cannot see if people listen. I can only see if they download it or not. The country where the podcast is mostly downloaded is, of course, Sweden. This is where I have my base. This is where I tell everyone that they need to go in and listen. And it has also been mostly Swedish people on the podcast so far. And they want to listen to themselves and to their peers. But in addition to Sweden, UK, USA and Norway, that is where it's mostly downloaded. We have listeners as far as Honduras, Saudi Arabia, Colombia, Tanzania and Greenland. So it's spread around the world and I can see a pattern. It's listened to where there are maritime activities going on. In addition to countries, I can see that in the UK, for example, it's mostly downloaded in the city centre of London, but also in Kent and in Swansea. In the United States, the shipping podcast is downloaded mostly in California, but followed by New York and Washington. It's amazing to understand that people out there are actually listening to what I put together here when I record at home and put it up for everyone to listen to. I think the entire process is amazing, and this is a way that we can actually spread the good word about shipping. I know that media and newspapers are not really interested in the good news. It's not their job. Their job is to talk about the accidents and the bad sides. But there are so many good sides of shipping. Let's continue this good trend. Go and tell everyone that they should download and listen. Otherwise, it's actually a bit wasted time. They should listen to the shipping podcast. If anyone wants a web player for their web page, please let me know, and I can submit that to you. The more listeners we get, the higher we climb the top lists of iTunes, for instance. And then there is a possibility that people who doesn't know the first thing about shipping will become interested. They will get the bug, as all of us has. So, until the next time, another exciting guests in my assembly line of interviews done in London in February. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast where the maritime professionals are talking about their everyday job.